So there are a few core beliefs that drive me in what I do with the 10th Amendment Center. And they're very, very simple. So if you guys don't mind, I'll ramble through them a little bit. 1, rights are not granted to us by government. They are ours by the nature of our birth, of being human. All just political authority anywhere comes from we the people. And government exists solely with our consent. 3, we the people of the several states, we created the federal government, and not the other way around. 4, the 10th Amendment defines the entire scope of federal power as that which we, the people of the several states, gave to it in the Constitution, and nothing more. 5, the people of Texas have the sole and exclusive right, power, and authority to govern yourselves as you see fit on everything that has not been delegated to the federal government in the Constitution. Just 2 more. 6, a government without limits is the definition of a tyranny. And the last one is, I think, the most important, and this is what we're talking about today. When the federal government, or as the gentleman here mentioned, the central government, which is how it acts, the national government, when it enacts laws or regulations or rules or mandates that are outside the scope of its constitutionally delegated powers, you are not bound to obey them. These simple 7 truths are really what defines the proper role of the federal government in the United States. That's how it's supposed to work. But I think anybody who can look at the Constitution, and it's written in plain English, we can all read the thing. It doesn't take a law degree to read simple English. Well, it's pretty obvious that most of what the federal government does is actually not authorized by the Constitution. Some people will tell me, well, maybe it's 60% is not authorized. I think maybe it's around 90. Either way, if they're doing something and you say, well, it's unconstitutional without even really putting much thought to it, the odds of you being right are pretty good. They don't follow the rules. Question: what do we do about it? Nullify! What, did we give it away with the name of the event? All right, I guess I'm done. Do we lobby Congress and ask federal politicians to limit federal power? No. Power. Do we go to federal courts and ask federal judges and dresses to limit federal power? No. Well, how about we vote the bums out and hope that new bums will limit their own power? Well, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison both warned us that if the federal government ever became the sole and exclusive arbiter of the extent of their own power, that power would always grow, whether we had courts or protests or elections or any of it. And sadly enough, they were right. For over a century, it doesn't matter what political party is running Washington, D.C., or what individual is occupying the White House and calls himself president, federal power always grows, year in and year out, and your liberty is less than it was the year before. Well, I mean, I think everybody here knows this stuff is true, so I'm speaking to the choir. But the question again is, what do we do about it? And it is what Thomas Jefferson and James Madison gave us back in the Principles of '98. And we'll hear many other great speakers talk about this more eloquently than I ever could. But the simple thing is, and I think Jefferson's quotes from this really sum it up. And I'm just paraphrasing, of course, but this is very important. He said, "The several states composing the United States of America are not united on a principle of unlimited submission to their general government. And whenever that government assumes undelegated powers, its acts are void and of no force. And of course, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy." So what is he saying? When the federal government violates the Constitution year in and year out, like it does, we're not supposed to wait 4 years for a new group of politicians in the hope that maybe someday down the line they're going to protect our rights. We're not supposed to wait 2 or 4 or 6 years or however long it takes to get to the Supreme Court in the hope that people like Elena Kagan are suddenly going to love the Constitution and believe that, did you guys hear what she had to say, that if the federal government wanted to mandate what we had to eat, she couldn't say that even that was unconstitutional. So these are the types of thugs that are in Washington, D.C., and they are thugs because they use force to try to get us to do what they want. And Jefferson did not want us to sit around and wait for it. The proper response is for us to stand up for the Constitution in our own state. We're supposed to say no to the federal government when it violates our rights. I think that's a good one to clap to. And we're supposed to stand up for it as it happens. And the reality is this is actually happening around the country right now. In 2007, one single state representative, I mean, this is the example of how individual people can actually create a movement. They can do something. There is hope for us, not the Obama-style hope, or whoever the next guy is going to be, but real hope for freedom and liberty in the Constitution. But in 2007, one single state representative in Maine said, well, this Real ID Act that we got in 2005, well, this is not authorized by the Constitution. We can deal with this under the 10th Amendment in our own state, and we will not comply with your law. In 2008, a couple of state legislators from Oklahoma, who we are very honored to have here today, Randy Brogdon and Charles Key, they introduced a simple, non-binding resolution reaffirming the Constitution and the 10th Amendment as the founders gave it to us, not as the courts have twisted it. In 2009, a single state representative in Montana introduced what's known as a Firearms Freedom Act, just like Leo Berman did here in 2009, to nullify some federal gun laws and regulations. And also in 2009, a single state representative in Arizona introduced what's known as a Healthcare Freedom Act, a state constitutional amendment that would in effect ban an Obamacare mandate in that state. And what has happened? Since then, we've had 25 states defy the federal government on the Real ID Act. They've said no to it. That law is virtually null and void in almost the entire country. 8 states... Eight states have already passed Firearms Freedom Acts. Hopefully one will come here in 2011 with your pushing for it. Of course, this is why we're here. 8 states have said, we are not going to allow federal gun laws and regulations under your perverse reading of the Commerce Clause. Because that's what they claim everything is commerce. And any government that can claim anything is commerce, regulating anything that moves, is not to be trusted.